welcome to our Impact 2020 webinar. It's really great to have you here for our final and 47th webinar of the year. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which I work and live, and that's the land of the Gadigal and Bidjigal people. I'd like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. We'd love to know where you are tuning in from today too, so please share with us what country you're on in the chat feed. It's one of our favourite parts of these webinars. My name is Rhonda Yanitsas and I work in the communications team at the Centre for Social Impact. CSI is a national education and research centre dedicated to catalysing social change for a better world. We believe everyone has a role to play in creating positive social change, and we work to help enable others to achieve it. We're built on the foundations of three of Australia's leading unis: UNSW Sydney, the University of Western Australia, and Swinburne, University of Technology. We have a range of education programs that we run, which we'll be getting to a little later. This webinar is being held under our Impact 2020 webinar series banner. We presented the first series of Impact 2020 over April, May and June this year through daily webinars. And as those 35 webinars were so successful, we've decided to continue with monthly webinars as part of a second Impact 2020 series, which commenced in June this year. Today is our final Impact 2020 webinar. We'll be running Impact 2021 webinars from February. It doesn't roll as well, actually. Our hope is that participants and the for-purpose sector will be able to learn through these webinars and apply those learnings and reflections to affect positive change in our community, particularly at this time. Take a look at impact2020.online for more info and for recordings of our previous webinars. There's lots of really interesting discussions, insights and resources about a whole range of topics within all of those recordings. A few housekeeping matters for today. We are recording this webinar and we'll make it available first to people who registered, and then a little later we'll be making the recording publicly accessible on CSI social media channels and website. During the webinar, you can change your view in the view settings area within Zoom, which is generally in the top right of your screen if you're on a desktop computer. There's a few options there, but we will be spotlighting each of our panellists and speakers to ensure they are front and centre. We'd love to see you all too, so we'd encourage you to please leave your video on if you're able to, and please know you'll be viewed by other attendees during the Q&A if you do leave it on. We'd also like to see your social media love about this webinar, so please share your experiences with your network using the hashtag Impact2020 online. Once the webinar starts, you'll continue to stay muted, but feel free to use the chat box for any questions or comments. We'll be running a general Q&A after our initial panel discussion today. After that general Q&A, we'll be breaking off into separate breakout rooms for each university CSI partners with. So that's UNSW Sydney, Swinburne and the University of Western Australia. As each CSI partner operates a little differently, we wanted to give you the opportunity to ask any specific questions you may have that are relevant to you. You are welcome to hang around for those breakout rooms if you have questions related to those unis and the degrees CSI offers at each of them. CSI's education directors at each uni will be happy to chat with you. Please also note we will be recording those breakout rooms. So that we know which uni you are interested in, we will need you to rename yourself via your profile on Zoom and add either UNSW, SWIN or UWA before your name as a prefix so that we can allocate you to the correct breakout room when the time comes. If you're not sure at this stage though, just leave your name as it is. Having said all of that, during the webinar, if you have any technical problems, our webinar moderators, Nicola and Rebecca, are here to help you if you need it. Okay, let's get started. To start off today, I'd like to first introduce you to our panel, Dr. Michael Moran, who is CSI's National Education Director and based with our CSI Swinburne team. We also have Bryony Parker. She is one of our alumni at CSI UWA and currently works in the social impact sector, dividing her time between a not-for-profit and the state government. We also have Jacquie Love here with us today. Jacquie is a current CSI UNSW student and founder of Secret Sisterhood. And finally, Mark Harwood, who is also a current student and at CSI Swinburne. He's also the CEO of ygap. Welcome to our panellists. I'll start with you first, Mark, if I can. I'd love you to tell us all about where you're at in your current career right now.
Thanks, Rhonda. Pleasure to be here. So I had the luxury of starting as the CEO of ygap a week before having to work from home. So I had a week in the office with all the new staff in Melbourne. We have 30 staff globally, 15 based in Melbourne. And then I had to implement a global pandemic policy. So I've been working from my bedroom ever since. If you don't know ygap, we believe in bringing about equitable and sustainable change through social entrepreneurship. And we do that through directly supporting the growth of locally led impact ventures, but also looking to improve the entrepreneurial ecosystem.
And how did you get to this point in your career that you're the CEO of ygap?
Yeah, it's a great question. I had a phone call in December last year from the board saying we'd love you to throw your hat in the ring. And I think that's the result of my network, being involved in the impact investing and social entrepreneurship sector here in Melbourne and Australia and even internationally. But I think it was the result of my previous role, which was running the social entrepreneurship and economic development team at World Vision Australia. And before that, I was in the corporate world, working for Accenture as a management consultant. So I think it was the culmination of bringing both a corporate sector background, but also overlaid with the social impact side of things. And then that was a nice marriage, which positioned me well to take on the ygap CEO role. But it's not something I was looking for. It kind of came my direction, and I thought it was a wonderful opportunity. And I've been very thankful to be working with the team and achieving impact since early March.
Amazing. And at what point in that time you were just talking about, did you decide to do a course with CSI, and what course did you choose to do?
Yeah, so I enrolled originally in the grad cert. I sort of just wanted to dip my toe in. I hadn't studied for a number of years. I wanted to complement my practical experience when I was at World Vision, leading the social entrepreneurship team with some theoretical. And I looked for years and I couldn't find a course that was really tapping into the social impact space. So I was very thankful when I came across the one that was being offered through Swinburne. As Mike will attest to, I've had 2 kids since starting the course. So I've probably been one of the longest students, and I need to always refresh my sort of status as a student. I have drawn it out, but my intent is eventually to finish the masters. But I just heard that I'm also even closer to doing the grad diploma, I think is correct, Mike. And so, yeah, I'm sort of in between grad cert and grad diploma, but it's been very drawn out, but I have delivered or been part of, the role at World Vision, ygap, and also being a hands-on dad since.
Wow, you've seen a lot in that time. Jacquie, I might move to you. So can you tell us a bit about Secret Sisterhood, where you're at in your career?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Rhonda, and nice to meet everyone. So I started Secret Sisterhood about 3 years ago now. And for those that don't know what Secret Sisterhood is, we're a social enterprise that's all about advocating for women's empowerment and gender equality. So to do that, we've created our own gender equality symbol, because there's nothing really out there like that at the moment. And then we create jewelry that features the symbol, and we sell the jewelry, and then we give 100% of the profits to women's charities from the jewelry sales. So we've grown quite a lot in the last 3 years, and we've been able to kind of give to a lot of different initiatives around the world. So we give to girls' education, we give to microfinance programs, we help fund a domestic violence hotline, and lots of other things. So yeah, that's me and my career at the moment.
And what were you doing before you established Secret Sisterhood? Where were you at?
Good question. So I was doing my undergrad, so I was studying fashion design, and that was kind of my path in life. I always wanted to be a fashion designer. I loved being creative. That was just kind of my path, and I never really looked sideways. And then during that undergrad, I decided to pick up a sub-major in journalism because I always loved writing. And through that degree, I started to become aware of the issue of human trafficking, and I hadn't really known about that issue before, and it just really opened my eyes to kind of what is going on in the world. And I was very shocked and horrified that it's still going on in the 21st century and we don't really hear much about it. So when I finished my undergrad, an opportunity came up to go to India with a charity called Stop the Traffic Australia, and they look at trafficking in Australia but also overseas. So we were able to meet with charities over there in that space. And that trip just completely changed my whole perspective on everything. It just opened my eyes to the real injustices that are going on in the world. So I came back really passionate, really excited to make a difference, but I didn't really know how. And I thought, okay, to make a difference, you go work in a charity or a non-for-profit. So I started looking around, and around that time, the concept of social enterprise came before me, and it was a really big light bulb moment for me that I thought, okay, I could actually create a business, use my skills in design, but at the heart of everything is to give back and help these women I'd met.
Amazing. And you created your own opportunity. You saw a need and you went for it. And so you're doing an MBA social impact at UNSW, and so you're getting through that in a little bit different to Mark in speed time. No judgment. And so tell us about what's been your biggest learning so far? Like, what have you loved about it?
So I have loved how practical it is. Like, I wasn't expecting it to be so kind of related to the real world. And in a lot of the subjects, you can kind of relate it to your own business or your own company. So recently I did impact investing, and the assessments were all based around like you could choose your own company. And that was just great for me. So I could spotlight secret Sisterhood and really work out, well, can we get impact investment? And I was really surprised that it was going to be that practical. And I also picked up a subject, managing people and organizations, and that was really fantastic for me as well, because I was kind of thrown into secret Sisterhood and I didn't really have much business experience, and I'm managing a team of people, but I didn't actually understand that managing is actually a skill. It's something that you can actually learn. So yeah, it's been great just already being able to apply all the learnings into my business.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that you picked it up. Picked up another subject. Thank you for that. And just a reminder to everyone, if you have any questions for the panelists, feel free to pop them in the chat feed. I'm going to move to Bryony now, who is an alumni of our CSI UWA course and the grad cert in social impact. That's right, Bryony?
Yes.
Great. And when did you do that? And what made you decide to do it?
So I studied the grad cert last year. You can do it over 2 years, but I did it in 1 year. Just thought I'd smash that. And I guess the path that led me to do social impact was really interesting. My first step into state government from working in the publishing industry was in Broome, so in the Kimberley region, and worked in remote Aboriginal communities in the Kimberley region, and for the Department of Aboriginal Affairs as it was then. And that just was like a massive kind of mind-blowing moment for me, similar to what we've heard, in that it was just a real reassessment of how you view the world, and I guess that led me to go on to work with vulnerable young people in Perth running a youth program. And while I was running the youth program for the state government there, I kept sort of meeting all these amazing inspirational people, and they kept talking about social impact and how to increase social impact, and I was like, oh, what is this term? And I went to the Social Impact Festival a couple of years ago when I was heavily pregnant with my second, and I thought, wow, these are my people. They're all talking my language, and I really want to step further into this. And instead of just sort of fudging it, I really want to deep dive in and learn much more about what this is all about. And so I just decided to take the plunge and sign up. And it was a quick decision, I think, because it was fairly an easy one. As soon as I saw the grad cert and read through what we were going to be learning, I was just like, yep, that's where the space that I want to be in. So that was really, really
yeah. And so you really did take the plunge. We've actually written a story I wrote a story about Bryony earlier this year, and we had an interview and we spoke a lot about your personal situation. So you have two really young children, which I can completely relate to. You were working 4 days a week and you decided to study. So how did you, one, balance that, but two, get the most out of the degree? So you weren't just doing it to get it done. You actually were really deep learning and really getting the most out of it. How did you do that?
Yeah. Well, it was a juggle. I'm definitely not going to lie and sugarcoat it and say that it was super easy, because there were many times that it really wasn't. I was exceptionally fortunate in my work that I had the autonomy, I guess, to pick up what I was using straight away and just implement it. And that is the way that I learn. And as Jacquie said, I found it to be a really practical degree. You know, I found that the frameworks and the tools that we were learning in each of the units, I could implement little bits and pieces in the program that I was managing straight away. So that really helped to embed those kind of theoretical learnings. And I mean, in regards to the personal stuff, having two little ones at home, I sort of had this picture in my mind that, oh yeah, I'm going to come home after a day at work and then put the kids to bed and then, get stuck into studying, and I'm going to actually, learn through that process, which I quickly found out to be absolutely wrong. Of course, that wasn't going to work. My brain was pretty much mush after a day of either working or parenting or both. And so I basically had to really pull upon all the favours that I could for that year. I just had to step completely away from any kind of, socialising and just use all of those favours to get study done. And the grad cert at UWA is done through the business school, and they have fantastic, rooms and a space that you can go in and study. And so I called upon all my family and all my friends that had ever offered over the time and said, can you help me out? And that was really different for me. I struggled to, maybe ask for help, but it meant that I could do this thing that I was so deeply passionate about. But I also had to, the way that I studied from the first unit to the last unit was really different. I did have to learn that I wasn't going to be able to do all of the readings. I had to read for purpose, really focus on the assignments that I was doing and relate that to my, in some way to my passions and my interests, so that was really relevant. And then I've looped back around and done a lot of further reading after I finished, because I just wasn't able to get it all. So
right.
that kind of figuring out how that was going to work around everything really helped as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And the resources, you have them forever. And also those networks, the connections with people who can provide more. Mike, we might get on to you as our National Education Director. Could you tell us about your role at CSI and what do you like most about it?
Sure. I guess like many at CSI, I have quite a diverse role. I essentially have three kind of core roles. First, I'm National Integration Director. As you foreshadowed, Rhonda, which is a kind of cross-node position around engagement, pedagogical innovation. I sit on the CSI executive, so there's a governance dimension to that role. Secondly, I am a researcher. I guess my focus and passion is on resourcing of not-for-profits and social enterprises, increasingly through non-traditional forms of resourcing, so mechanisms such as social finance and impact investment. So I research things like social impact bonds. I've got a particular interest in layered impact investment transactions, things that sound more complex than they actually are. But it's a really unique and enjoyable role because it brings together elements of finance, public policy, regulation, trying to work out how sectors can collaborate to generate more resources, I guess, for social and environmental objectives. So my day-to-day as a researcher is dealing with quite a diverse number of actors, from institutional investors to charitable trusts to not-for-profits at the coalface, trying to work out how they can have greater access to capital. And third and finally, I guess my core role is as a lecturer. And this really is one of the most rewarding parts of the job. As you hear, we've got some incredible students, and it's a real privilege to work with such a dynamic cohort of students. And I've been lecturing for 15 odd years now, and you just don't come across cohorts this dynamic and interesting. So it's just watching the networks form, watching people, take pedagogy and learnings and apply it in their everyday work, you really get to see a lot of impact. So I've got a diverse role, like I guess most people at CSI, but I see most of the impact through the teaching and watching people come together and take those learnings back out into the community.
And so on that, and I'm sure a lot of the participants would be interested because they will all have such diverse roles. What types of people do we find tend to complete our degrees?
I guess we have three kind of core cohorts. The first cohort, I would say, early, mid, sometimes late career professionals from the kind of core of the social economy, so charities, not-for-profits, social enterprises, so that the third sector in a sense, who are really trying to advance their careers and stay ahead of future trends. So that's a traditional cohort, I guess. The second is, I guess, public and private sector professionals, and what might be described as social impact facing roles. So public servants working in social services, management consultants is a really growing area, who work with not-for-profits on social innovation, people in corporate responsibility positions within corporates. But I'd say this is actually the fastest growing cohort. So a lot of private sector entities are pivoting towards trying to understand and improve their social and environmental impacts. So we're seeing a lot of growth there. So as it becomes kind of core to business. And a final cohort, which is also fairly large, are those who are making a shift from the private sector and government into the not-for-profit sector, or people, in either cohorts that have taken some time out from work, so from caring roles and so forth. So it's quite a diverse cohort, but it kind of really reflects this kind of three sectors of the economy and society. So the not-for-profit sector, government, and the private sector, and where those sectors meet.
Right, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So here at CSI, we've got a really strong focus on industry and how that relates to what we're teaching. So can you tell us what our approach is to our degrees and a little about how we partner with industry to ensure students are learning both practical skills and best practice?
Sure, it's a great question, Rhonda. I guess industry understood from our perspective is, again, the three sectors. So generally business schools focus on industry. It's very much the private sector, but industry to us is the three key sectors of the social economy, from not-for-profits and charities, governments, to the private sector. And each of those sectors is actually directly involved in our courses in varying ways. So I guess the first level, every unit utilises industry guests to provide case studies of their work. And our lecturers have really strong networks across sectors, and our partners are really generous in imparting their knowledge. So each unit as a foundation will bring in, a core number of industry guests. We have a number of deeper partnerships. So whereby, for a subject, students will be partnering with the different organisations, say develop an evaluation impact measurement framework. So working with that organisation. Other subjects, they might be partnering with an organisation to work out how to develop a social venture to address that mission. But I guess the key point is, and Jacquie and illuminated this really well, they're quite authentic assessments. So what you do, you're going to apply back into the real world. And often students bring their own projects in, either officially or unofficially, and work through those through the classes. So we do strive to design assessments that are useful for students in the real world, I guess. And I think, as Mark mentioned earlier, that doesn't mean we kind of don't have a theoretical basis behind our work. And we really do strive to integrate theory in to our units and subjects. But what we try and do is use real world examples to illuminate how theoretical and conceptual frameworks apply outside the university setting. But I do think as universities, this does set us apart from other providers in the sector. We kind of really do understand and care about the complexities of the systems we're working within.
And so, Mike, I might go to you just to talk a little bit more about that, because I'd really like to know, like, maybe one of the subjects or something in particular that you've done within that first grad cert. What was a highlight for you? Is there something you can remember that you, or a moment where you were like, one of those aha moments?
Yeah, no, and it was good to hear the others speaking, because I think, having been involved in the program for so many years, I have seen the CSI be very intentional about making it more practical and applicable to what we're doing in our actual roles. So I would actually be bringing actual case studies from World Vision or programs that I was working on, and developing the monitoring and evaluation framework for that, and then taking it back. And that was really good, because as a technical support team, we didn't have that embedded expertise in our team. We work alongside others to do that. So it almost expanded my own skill set, which was really good. The last subject I did was designing for growth. And I really found that a beautiful marriage of sort of the social impact, but also applying it through a business lens. And so I really liked that, thinking about when is the time to have divergent versus convergent thinking. And that's always stuck with me. And I bring that to our brainstorming or our collaboration sessions, even at ygap, and talk about, okay, when is it time to go broad and just really think in an innovative way, and what could we do that's completely different to anything we've ever done before to really make an impact in the sector. But then when do we need to really sort of bring it back to a tangible opportunity that has a revenue outcome, but also social impact alongside that. So yeah, and I mean, I agree with Bryony and Jacquie. It was tough. Like I had to fly my parents down from Queensland one time just to finish that last subject. And I think when I did my undergrad years ago, I kind of just wanted to rush through and just get the certificate. Whereas this one, because every reading and everything is it's been chosen so carefully, I wanted to really absorb it and learn from it and not just skip over the readings. And that's why I've really delayed doing the course, because I want to do it properly and not kill myself or my family or my parents at the same time. So I'm going to do it one day. And when I do, it's going to be a great celebration. But every subject I've done has been very applicable and very helpful. So yeah, it's been definitely valuable.
And Bryony, for you, you've had you have quite a diverse career, like a portfolio career, perhaps. So is there a moment or something that you did within the graduate certificate that you were able to apply in one of your roles?
Absolutely. I think that this, more than any other study that I've done, I've used something from almost every unit in every job that I've done since. And I think that I maybe fell into a little bit of the cohort that Mike was talking about, working in state government, looking for where maybe I can expand into this space. And I had, as I said before, I was very fortunate to be able to have complete autonomy over the program that I was managing. And so straight away, as soon as I did the first unit and I sort of stepped into these kind of social innovation kind of scene, I guess I was like, right, let's do this, and managed to hire a contractor to come in and run that process, and sort of learn more about that specific thing from them. I also, on the back of that kind of rapid innovation process that we ran, I redeveloped the whole strategy for the program. So in that, I embedded a lot of the frameworks in regards to maybe outcomes measurement, but also in regards to some of the appreciative inquiry stuff that we learned in our leadership for social impact unit. And, so probably a little nugget from each one of them I could embed straight away in the role I was currently doing. And since then, as you mentioned, it's been quite a lot of different shifts because I've gone where the opportunities have been presented to me through the networks that I've built during this course. And I've had so many amazing opportunities to work with people this year and really kind of focus in on some of those methodologies. I worked for the Department of Communities, and we ran a co-design process for the homelessness sector, which was an amazing opportunity to really sort of deep dive into that really complex space and see how these tools can really kind of uncover some great things. And I think, absolutely every unit, I definitely learned some stuff. My brain doesn't naturally go to impact investing, so that was a bit of a struggle for me. But it gave a really great overview of the whole kind of thing, the whole kind of jigsaw puzzle, I guess, of how everything fit in. And I think that it meant that I could deep dive into something that was going to really work for the programs that I was managing.
Wonderful. I like the jigsaw analogy. So we are going to get to each university and how they're structured and what they offer when we go to the breakout rooms. I just want to jump in quickly, though, to tell everyone we also run short courses at CSI, and they come up a fair bit, but there's two that I just want to mention that have been, we know we're going to do next year. So the first one is our popular 2-day governance for social impact course. We will be running that in Sydney in March and at other locations throughout the year. It's a great and very well received course, and it's directed at board members and senior leaders within the for-purpose space. And it's all about leading and governing with social impact at front and centre. And our CEO, Professor Christian Muir, generally runs those courses and gets great feedback. So you can find out more about that one in the executive education section of our website. And Nick will share the URL in the chat feed for that one. And then also our team at UWA are also continuing their outcomes measurement courses next year, which also run over 2 days. So this year we've been running them virtually, and next year we are looking at continuing those online courses, but hopefully introducing some more face-to-face workshops. And that'll be around Australia, hopefully, fingers crossed. So stay tuned on our website for more info about those ones too. Okay, now I would like to introduce a new person to our panel, Gianna Fung. She's one of my colleagues here at CSI. She looks after our scholarships program, amongst other things. Gianna's very popular because she knows about our scholarships and she runs that scholarships program. And she's here today to tell us a bit more about them. And she's actually at Ballina Library because in Northern New South Wales, as you probably know, there's a bit of flooding, a lot of rain. So she's got a few internet issues. So hopefully we'll be okay for this little while. Gianna, are you there? Yes, you are. Great.
I am. I'm here. I hope you can hear me. Thank you very much for the introduction. Yes, I am at Ballina Library. I'm probably disturbing a few people, but I will try to keep my voice at a normal tone. I tend to get a little bit loud when I get excited.
So Gianna, can you tell us about the scholarships we've got on offer at CSI?
Sure. So this upcoming year, we have over $180,000 in scholarships across 20 donor-funded awards. Each university has an offering of scholarships ranging from $5,000 to $25,000. Applications are currently open and will close on the 28th of January. So for more information, I definitely encourage interested people on the webinar and those who listen to the recording to check out the CSI website and specifically the scholarship pages. But I do want to highlight one of our newest scholarships. So this scholarship was only announced last week. It is being offered through the Swinburne Philanthropy and Social Impact Alumni Group, and it's in honour of Christopher Baker. So it's the Christopher Baker Memorial Scholarship, and it's valued at $10,000. So this award is in honour of Dr. Baker's significant contribution to our sector, and the applications are now open for that award, and that award will actually close in March on the 28th.
Wonderful. That's a lot of scholarships. And Nick has shared the link. Please check that out. So who do we like to encourage to apply for scholarships?
Oh, anyone. We encourage everyone to apply, whether you're already studying, thinking about studying with us. As you can see from the student panelists represented today, and as Mike mentioned earlier, we have a diverse student body studying with us across the CSI universities. And whether you're at the start of your social impact journey or well established in the sector, we definitely encourage you to apply. Also, if you're unsuccessful in receiving a scholarship and you are dependent on it for funding, we do have the option for you to withdraw before the census date. So there's definitely no downside to applying for the scholarship.
Mm-hmm. Great. And what would be your advice? You've seen a lot of applications for people applying.
I've seen a lot of applications, as have the education directors, as they review all the applications that come in. But I'd say definitely be authentic. Share your vision with us. How do you see your studies at Social Impact equipping you to become a change agent? Whether your dream is to start your own social enterprise or to ignite change from within your organisation where you're working, we want to see your commitment to catalysing change. So we've had everyone from full-time students, social entrepreneurs, women taking career breaks to raise young families, people in banking and finance, non-profit government. Social impact is for everyone. So don't let your concept of a good candidate deter you from applying.
I love it.
I'll just add to that. I've been assessing them for a number of years. I guess Paul also has as well. I think, the key, and this is a tip for the people who came today, really showing how you're going to apply what you learn. So, you can be completely new to the field, you can be completely established, but it's how you're going to apply the knowledge you'll gain from the course into, as Gianna said, augmenting social impact. So
thanks, Mike.
Encouragement to apply.
Yeah.
It's always a tough pool, but it's a reasonable chance.
Got to put your hat in the ring.
Definitely.
Gianna, I might just ask you now. Someone's just asked, Julie, are scholarships open to Kiwis? I think the answer is no. I think it's Australian residents.
No, only, so that is, you have to be an Australian citizen or permanent resident. So if you're a Kiwi who's an Australian permanent resident, then sure. Unfortunately, no sole foreign nationals.
Sorry, Julie. She said, okay, thank you.
Thanks, Julie.
And thanks to you, Gianna. And a huge thanks to our generous donors too, who provide the funds to these scholarships. We couldn't do it without them. Thanks so much, Gianna.
Thanks, Rhonda.
Before we get to the Q&A, we've got a couple of questions, but feel free to add some more in the chat feed, everyone. Jacquie, you were the recipient of a scholarship for your MBA Social Impact. So tell us, what did that mean to you? And did it mean that you could do the degree?
Yeah, well, it was a huge, not surprise, but it just like made my whole year. It was amazing when I got the call.
For me, I loved it.
It was really good. Well, as everyone knows, like an MBA is a huge financial commitment, and running a social enterprise where we give the profits to charities, I don't really have a lot of extendable income, and so I was kind of tossing between whether to do it or not. And then I just, because I came across the course and I loved how it mixed the business with social impact, because I just couldn't really find a course out like that there that kind of melded the two together. And once I discovered that, I just talked to all my friends and family about it. I was like, I just discovered the most amazing course. Like, I really want to do it. I don't know if I can. And I just was, talking to a lot of people. And then randomly, my dad then messaged me saying that he saw that they were offering some scholarships through CSI. And then it was quite funny. Once he told me, I also am subscribed to a social enterprise sort of newsletter called Social Change Central. I'm not sure if you know about that, but I also saw it through there and saw it through a couple of other mediums. So then immediately applied, and then received the amazing call that I was one of the recipients, which was amazing. And it was just, it kind of helped me get over the line to be able to commit to it. And also it just made me feel as though like I was really supported, that CSI were actually really supporting young kind of startup social enterprises, and that you could see the value in that. So really
that's awesome. I'm so glad you got it. Okay, we'll just jump to the Q&A now, and then we're going to go off into the breakout rooms. So Mike, this is a question for you from Mark Rudd. Does CSI allow for the option for working with individuals and businesses, charities on a specific project? And how does it manage issues relating to ownership of intellectual property?
Sure, that's a great question, Mark. Those types of subject level partnerships are generally negotiated at that level. So with, say, the convener or the course authority, or through the respective node directors. So there's no kind of mechanism for applying externally. They're generally through the relationships that the academics and researchers have with different actors. In terms of the IP question, each university manages things in their own way. I mean, we have specific agreements, like a pro forma agreement for negotiating partnerships through a subject or at a degree level. So it's a bit of a, I haven't fully answered the question, but it's not one that's easy to answer because there's not a formal mechanism for application, but there's definitely formal mechanisms for addressing IP issues.
Okay, great, thank you. Here at CSI, we obviously run our education programs, but we do a lot of research as well. So can you tell us how our research programs feed into all of our degrees?
Yeah, I think that's another very good question, Rhonda. I think one really, important role of CSI is we really do live the mantra that teaching is research-led. We're all constantly undertaking different research projects on behalf of industry and government. So, as an example, I'm currently working with colleagues on mapping accelerators and incubators across Australia on behalf of the Paul Ramsay Foundation to understand gaps in the ecosystem. And this type of project feeds directly into what, for example, I'm going to be teaching. And each academic really is involved in several projects like that in a given year. We also use a lot of case study-based research, and that's generally led by the people who have done the research. So we've got a formal case study program, which is under development, but your lecturer will have generally, been behind the research project and produced all the data, interviewed all parties to say impact investment transaction, which is developed from literally thousands of words. So I think we do genuinely live that mantra that teaching should be research-led. And I don't think that's always the case in academia. And being absorbed in the day-to-day of research that is industry-facing provides us, I think, with some really unique insights as we know the field we're working in really well.
Definitely. Okay, I do have another question, but I'm just conscious of the breakout rooms and I can see that we need to set that up a little more. So Nick, I'll just go through the instructions again. Have you set up the breakout rooms for us? Yeah, cool. So to all of our participants, as I was saying at the beginning, you might have missed it or you might not have, we need to add a prefix to the front of our name on Zoom profile so we know which breakout room you'd like to go into. Now, if you're not sure what breakout room, and they will be UNSW specific, Swinburne specific, and University of Western Australia specific. If you're not sure, if you could just add the university that you're closest to. So at the front of your name, if you hover over your name and rename yourself, if you just add UNSW or Swin or UWA before your name, Nick, when the time comes, which is a couple of minutes away, will allocate you to the breakout room, and then our ed directors in those rooms will take you through the sort of nuts and bolts of the course, and you can ask any specific questions you might have in there. Hopefully we're getting, oh yes, great, we're getting a few prefixes. Thanks everyone. So I'll just go to my last general question for Mike, and I think this is a really interesting one. What kind of careers do people go on to do, or do they develop within after doing one of our degrees?
Another great question, Rhonda. I think, this is a bit of a challenging one to address in that we have such a diversity of career trajectories amongst our students, and that reflects that broad three sectors that, most of our students backgrounds they come from. So I guess in broad terms, they would be in those fields I mentioned earlier. So whether it's managers and executives in not-for-profits, and all that entails, from social program design to evaluation impact measurement, to fundraising, to social enterprise, working in charitable trusts and foundations as grant makers and managers. And I guess that cohort is really addressing those 50,000 or so charities that make up the core of Australia's social economy. So I guess that's the not-for-profit component. As mentioned earlier, there's also an increasingly large cohort finding roles within the traditional private sector. So that's, again, more classic corporate responsibility roles within major companies, and some small and medium-sized enterprises. Some are more novel social innovation facing roles within companies trying to leverage their assets to improve their environmental and social impact. And I guess also as professional advisors and consultants to individuals. So there's advisors to high net worth individuals, to family offices, as investment advisors, also in impact investing as well. So in the more traditional finance sector, we're seeing growth in that area for jobs as well as students. And again, finally, I would say more traditional government and policy roles are still remain an important destination. I mean, there's a myriad of state and Commonwealth jobs where social impact is core. These often overlap with that first group, so that social sector, so those with oversight of the social economy, health, education, welfare, program design, again, evaluation. So they are kind of broad, varied and rich, I guess, destinations. But I think that's, reflected in our panellists as well.
Yeah, it's a plethora of roles.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I guess another thing to kind of add there is, the social economy is the fastest segment of the Australian economy in terms of growth, and that's reflected in the labour market. So health, education, welfare are where many jobs of the future are, as well as on the margins of those two.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we're ready to go into the breakout rooms. This is actually, after the 47th webinar, the first time we've done breakout rooms. So forgive us, I'm sure it will be fine. So Nick's going to open them up now and let you all in. And then at the end, we've got until about 12:55, we'll come back into the main room. Thanks, everyone. Let's see how this goes.
At UNSW, we have a certificate, which is a shorter course, and then we have a degree in social impact, and then we also have two specialisations, one which is the MBAX specialisation, so that's the degree that Jacquie was talking about, where you do an MBA and then you also have a social impact specialisation as part of that. We also run a Masters of Commerce specialisation in social impact and global sustainability, which is part of that program. So, so up on the screen now that Erin's sharing, you can see that there is the requirements for those, the certificate and the diploma, as well as the MBAX and the MCOM program. And obviously I'm happy to speak through any of those if you have questions about it. Our primary course offerings is that we have a core subject in social impact, which is introductory, which is probably the most theoretical of all our courses because it is introducing so much new theory, and it's also introducing a lot of the topic areas which are then explored in more detail in the rest of the electives. We then have all the electives that you can see there. And in the MBAX program, we also do a capstone. We also do a capstone at the end, which is very much a super practical application. So a lot of people use that to focus on their own work and applying whatever particular area it is that they've drawn out of the course that they want to work on, whether that is to do an impact measurement model or whether it's to work on a CSV, creating shared value kind of program within their organisation. So there's different ways that can be then developed. So as I said, I'd really like to know what questions you have rather than me talking here. I'm an education-focused academic, which we have at UNSW, which means, and most of our small team of education in social impact are, which means actually my main focus in social impact is education. We also run an undergraduate course, which is a great opportunity to introduce, it's a general elective, so we get students from all across the university studying all sorts of subjects. And that's a great way for us to introduce social impact to new people. What we find in the graduate program is that the people coming to study social impact already have a really huge interest and investment in it. And that's always means that we have, I think Mike mentioned this earlier, we always have these really amazing groups of people coming through our courses, and that creates a rich learning environment for everyone as they interact off each other. And so as an education facilitator, that's a really exciting place to work. And I'm doing too much teacher talk time. So what I'd like to do is know what your questions are and find out what I can help you to understand now. So I need to see if there's anything in the chat. This is Mark. Are you here? It's quite tricky with the share screen. Actually, Erin, can you turn the share screen off and we can just look at each other for now? And if anyone has any specific questions related to the program, we can go back to that. How's that? So Mark is interested in accessing the research and partnership opportunities with CSI rather than educational courses. And I guess, Mark, then that's probably a conversation around what it is that you see as that partnership space, and certainly there's a conversation there. I would say also, though, that from watching various people come through our coursework, then there's also a real opportunity to make connections through that, as well as with our so it's like through the education as well as with the education program. Which you know, I think, as Mike was saying, like a lot of it is very course specific, those relationships, and it really depends on what particular area we're looking at. So it might be a more focused individual conversation that you need to have about that, but I'm happy to hear more from you. But I'll attend to some other questions around the education program first. So Courtney is asking if I'd seen any career pathways from social impact postgrad degrees leading to international NGO positions. I'll try and think of some examples. I've certainly know of some people who have worked internationally while doing the courses or before doing the courses, as well as after doing the courses. So I'm not sure how I'd narrow that down. And certainly I've just had contact recently from an alumni who's been in London working with the Skoll Foundation, which is a kind of quite an impressive NGO over there, and he went directly from doing his degree here to doing that. So there's I think in terms of those career pathways, there's certainly lots of opportunity, and there's also a lot of potential in exploring and researching and getting that sort of educational framework for understanding what is actually happening in some of those organisations as well. So what is actually being discussed in that sort of social innovation space at a place like the Skoll Foundation is something that we would be looking at in our course as a matter of sort of exploring what we call the social ecosystem, the social purpose ecosystem that we're working in. Okay, and another good education question is, what differences can one expect between the online only and hybrid delivery models rather than the obvious? It'd be interesting to know what your obvious is on that, but it's actually been really interesting for us this year because we do offer fully online courses, and they're very structured to be online delivery. And in fact, a lot of thought and a lot of pedagogy went into thinking about how to make that happen, because one of the aims is to have the flexibility that you require in the online environment, but also maintain a high level of continuous engagement. So we have asynchronous forums as being one of the main accesses for participation in those, because it means that you're not having to ask everyone to be online at the same time. Particularly works when we do have students overseas, for example, but also with busy lives. It means that you are still expected to spend that couple of hours engaging and discussing and learning from your peers, but you can do it asynchronously. So you can do it late at night, or you can do it early in the morning, or you can do it in your lunch break, or you can do it whenever it works in with your particular timetable. So that asynchronous is quite a significant pillar of the online course design, as well as having that sort of accessibility that's there for all the materials being online. Whereas our seminar programs have been designed around an intensive weekend. So having that intensive weekend means that you've got a sort of very workshopy environment where you've got the face-to-face, but you're also having to do a lot of development and reading and thinking through your ideas separate to that. So we found that we need a more blended approach for that. So there is actually still quite a lot of online material related to those seminar programs. What we've found with the advent of COVID and the fact that we had to deliver our intensive weekends online, they did go surprisingly well, but it also has opened up some really interesting questions for us about how we do blended in terms of that synchronous and asynchronous and what actually works for people. So some of our fully online courses have had more extended webinar programs where there's more synchronous face-to-face, because that's what students were feeling the need for, whereas others have adapted the other way and actually relied even more heavily on the asynchronous. So there's actually quite a lot of flexibility in the way that we work with those programs within certain participation requirements. And so in answer to that question, actually, there's quite a lot of fluidity between the two, but I'd say one of the big differences is that the online is a very focused weekly participation, which is not the case with the seminar program. I think we've got quite a few more questions while I answered that one at length. Erin, if there was one about the, I think, translating programs, which maybe if you can answer in the chat.
Sorry, Jacquie, which question from who?
Oh, sorry, I'm just trying to scan through quickly.
Yeah, I can see the one from the City of Logan Innovation about, yeah, so if you have completed the graduate diploma, you can actually transfer into the MBAX specialising in social impact. So there are some extra courses into the Masters, the MBAX program specialising in social impact. So you would get credit for the courses that you've completed in your graduate diploma. And there would be some additional courses. You would need to do the core courses of the MBA, and then there would be the capstone course would be your final course through the Centre for Social Impact that you would need to complete.
Thanks, Erin.
No problem.
Sorry, I'm just reading through. So we do have a note there, Mark, that Jana will follow up with you about your interests. Although I'm also thinking when I look at that, that actually one of those points that you talk about, identifying what is being done and how and whether or not you're sort of reinventing the wheel or whether you're replicating something, is actually also another good reason to want to do the coursework, even though it's your main interest is in those relationships and partnerships, because it certainly gives you those windows and frameworks to explore those. Do you have any other questions that there's a new message.
Jocelyn Walker, one of our graduate diploma students, had just mentioned that she would like to know more about the course. I'm not sure if she can elaborate on what exactly, what questions she had that she'd like answered in this group. But Jocelyn, I'm not sure if you want to
Anna, I just commented to say hi and thank you, and that just to listen and learn a little bit more, because I started pretty quickly, like Jacquie was saying. I sort of found out about the course, got involved, did it all online during COVID, and obviously not going to the uni at all. I kind of, it's brilliant, but I'm trying to learn what else you can do with it, how you can transfer into workplace, just that kind of thing. So just to absorb a bit more about the course and about CSI. So nothing in particular, but thank you, Jana.
Thank you, Jocelyn. I think it can be really difficult to get a sense of overview with the course program, and especially I find looking things up on UNSW course guides really quite complicated. We do have the links from our education program to the course description and all of that kind of detailed information, but from a theoretical level it's probably not quite as clear that it actually all intersects. So when we do our course programming, we've looked very closely at what we thought were the key issues, and it is also playing to our strengths to some extent. So making use of the fact where we have people who work in impact investment, like Michael Katz, who teaches our investment program, or whether we have someone who's worked in measurement like Dr. Ramia. So but we did also have an overview of that program when we developed it, and I don't know that always translates when we're communicating it through those various enrolment processes that people go through, because each of those then becomes a specialisation, which is why our introductory course is so important in terms of giving insight into each of those different avenues, because there are things that will resonate more with some students than with others in terms of what they want to pursue. And whether that is impact investment, or whether it's creating shared value, or whether it's measurement, there's those areas where it's like you can recognise, I can see that's where I need my strength. And then we also have a lot of really practical based programs, as I said, and developing field projects is also an option, as well as the capstone course. So I spoke earlier about the capstones course being very much applied, but we also have field projects that can run, which is a course where you can actually design your own field project and work on that with a course facilitator, and make that quite a rigorous process of design, as well as applying it directly to your work area.
Yeah, well, that exactly backs up what you said about the first course. It was very theory based. I've only done two. Jacquie and I just did investment together last semester, which was great. It was so practical. And now I'm trying to decide what to do next year, and looking at the course structure and which subjects would be best suit my work, and how much learning I should do before I leave the harder ones to the end, where I've got my academia skills back up to scratch, working it that way. So I have downloaded all the subject guides, and like you said, Jacquie, it's hard sometimes to read through and work out which ones will be best. It all makes sense. Like, I think no matter what order you do it in will be brilliant, because it does set you up that first course where you do it all online, and every week you have to participate, and it's very interactive. And then when Jacquie and I did it together last term, we did 2 full weekends with Michael Katz, and that was brilliant too. So now I might be trying to plan next year with the 2 intensive weekends, because that was just really great to base around work and family, and also, as your confidence grows with all the readings and balancing everything out. It's just nice to have the choice as well. I mean, if you're not near UNSW, so I've had colleagues that have been in Perth, and that's, you're all online, of course, but to do it in face-to-face was really good. We're all blended because we had some people in Melbourne as well, so there were people online and in the room.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really
It's a good point. That flexibility is so important to us to be able to offer as well. But it's gone through this new phase now with those intensive weekends where we have developed the capability, and this was also thanks to support at UNSW, to be able to do what we call concurrent dual mode, which means that we can have people in the room and we can also have people who can't be in the room still be part of that learning environment. And you know, we're all upskilling to facilitate that really well. In answer to your question, Sally, about the capstone, so it's actually a requirement that you're at the end of the degree, so you need to be completing your final unit to do the capstone. So it's very much designed as an application of what you've learned and a culmination. So it's kind of working on the idea that at the end of that program, you're going to be in a position to say, okay, this is, and also to speak to your aspiration as well. So this is what I want to do next. This is how I'm going to do that. And it might not be all of what, I mean, in fact, it won't be all of what you want to do next, because we have a lot of students who dream pretty big, which is great, but it will be one step towards that can then be evaluated in a sort of academic framework. Because we work in these programs, there is obviously a real academic rigor to anything that we do. So anything that we do has to be accessible according to sort of quite high standards that are set by us as well as by UNSW. And that, I mean, that's part of the requirement of being part of a prestigious degree, for example, like an MBA, but it's also how we approach teaching as well, is that we're very, you know, and when I spoke earlier about being an education-focused academic, is that we've got quite an impressive team of people who are all very focused on the fact that that learning is one of those, is the most significant outcome that we want to see, and that therefore all the course design and the assessment needs to be looked at rigorously through that filter.
Can I just ask, is that a compulsory to do the capstone? Because it looked like for the cert there was the social impact theory is core, and then 3 from 9 electives. Is capstone as in addition to that, or it's one of the electives?
It's only in the sorry, it's in the it's not required in the certificate.
Oh, okay.
All the diploma. It's required for the MBA specialisation.
Ah, right. Sorry.
So it's also part of the work integrated learning program. We've got Heather here if anyone has any questions about that, because that a lot of that program that Heather runs is part of the Masters of Commerce specialisation. But there's also quite a big focus at UNSW in work integrated learning, which is a specific set of programs which require practical work, as well as sort of meeting some academic requirements in terms of reports. So again, there's that educational rigor, but there's also a very practical component.
Sorry, Jacquie, is that helpful if I share this just so anyone on here can have a look for more questions, or should I take, I've just shared my screen to put on the program and just so where they can see the courses?
Yeah,
okay.
Thanks, Erin.
No problems.
Jacquie, can I ask if there's a linear relationship between the cert and the dip and then the MBAs or MCOMs? So for instance, I did the cert 8 years ago now. If I wanted to move into to do an MBAX or do an MCOM, do I have to flow through the dip and do those courses and then follow from then on into the MBAX, or is it much more modular and I can just pick and choose different modules over the years and eventually put them all together to meet the course requirements of the full MBA? And is there any time period that I have to do that in?
So if you were wanting to do the MBA, then it would require you'd need to get credit for the certificate courses that you'd already done. So that would, you would get credit for those. So if you did a certificate and then you decide you want to go into the MBA, but because that would be the MBA enrolment's actually through AGSM, the Australian Graduate School of Management, then that, you know, because there's all their core course offerings and so forth and meeting their requirements. So that would be that application process. But you'd get credit for this as part of the specialisation if that's where you wanted to go. I think there is a danger, isn't there? We were talking about, Erin, if you do the graduate diploma and then want to do an MBA, then you can end up overdoing, you can end up doing more subjects than you need.
Yeah, and there actually are students that are happy to do that. I mean, the graduate diploma has the 8 courses within it, and so when they transfer then into the MBAX, they would do the 6 core MBA subjects and then an additional social impact capstone. Otherwise, sometimes if students are unsure, do they want to start with the graduate diploma, we would if they've come and said they were unsure about that level of commitment, we would say to start off with the graduate certificate, and then once they've completed that, they can either choose, did they want to go into the graduate diploma, or they could get the recognition of prior learning for either the graduate diploma or for the MBAX. In answer to your question, because I know you mentioned in the Master of Commerce as well, some of these subjects are listed as electives within the Master of Commerce, but you would need to also follow that program structure. So it wouldn't be that you could pick and choose. If you were very selective in the beginning, you could put it all together, but there would be certainly additional courses that you would need to undertake.
Yeah. Okay.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah, I think one of the things I drew out of the conversation earlier was the incredible diversity of the ways that people have approached this study, and the fact that you can have a long process of study while constantly working and applying it, or you can have that, okay, I'm just going to dive in like Bryony did and do the deep dive and do it and you know, do it intensively. And it really is possible to approach it in a number of different ways, but it is always a big time commitment, and that's kind of one of the things that came out. And so a big challenge is to balance that time commitment, but also make sure that you've got that space to really make it work as a deep learning, but also as something that works for you in your sort of whole life plan and in the work that you're doing. And there's a lot of adaptability for that reason, and I think that's that makes the course offering quite versatile in the way that you can approach that. But then if you've got a clear picture of where you want to go with it, there's also that option to design and carefully put in all your electives and follow it.
Thank you.
So the real world application, I'm going to ask Heather to talk about CSI Will courses because she's here with us.
What would you specifically like me to address?
Tell us how students have the opportunity to partner with organisations, real non-for-profits, and apply their learning to the real world.
Okay, I've got 57 seconds. All right. Okay, so I've got a lot of contacts in social entrepreneur space and not-for-profits, and I approach them and ask them if they've got business projects they'd like the students to work on. So it's always a unique project, but as a team, they do things like look at if this business wants to expand into a new market, what are the conditions that they need to be thinking about? If they need a social impact measurement framework, what are the things they need to be thinking about? We're going to do some really interesting ones on social procurement policy during the summer term in a couple of programs. So, basically it's about connecting the students to real entrepreneurs and people working in the for purpose space, and giving them an overview and experience of that ethos, and also having them do something meaningful.
A really warm welcome to everybody, and thank you for taking the opportunity to come to the seminar today. My name is Graham Dwyer, and I'm the course director at CSI Swinburne for our Master of Social Impact program. What does that mean? Well, ultimately, I'm your first port of call in terms of your studies at Swinburne, and I remain your first port of call right throughout the life cycle of your studies, whether you're taking the graduate certificate or whether you signed up for the master's. And what I find I do a lot of is just really liaising with students and offering them some thoughts, comments, advice around their study plan, how they'd like to build their degree, depending on what they're interested in, making connections for them across university. But also sometimes it's about actually helping and offering that support, because I think what we picked up from the main discussion is that life is busy and it's hectic, and our degree program is very much about flexibility and enabling people to succeed. So that's a key part of what I see as being my role. I also teach 2 units, Leadership for Social Impact and Corporate Social Accountability. And that's been with Christian, who's also in the group here today, and also with Mike as well. So you'll find that we support each other to really support you in making sure that you get the right blend of how you achieve your study plan in a way that doesn't overwhelm you, but also just helps you to succeed and get to the end of your degree. So please feel free to ask any questions, and I can see Mike has the degree structure up there as well.
So did you guys want me to go through the structure of the course, or so the different levels going from graduate certificate through to diploma and then masters? I think that might be a good way of sort of explaining the structure.
I think that would be super helpful, Mike, because it is sometimes when you see this on the page, it can be quite overwhelming, but it's actually quite straightforward, particularly when Mike explains it. So I think that would be super, Mike.
Cheers, Graham. So we, of course, offer the Graduate Certificate of Social Impact, which is the core degree that's offered across all 3 universities, so UWA, Swinburne and UNSW. That's a 4-unit graduate certificate. So as Graham mentioned, it can be done very flexibly. From next year, I think this is an important point to note, is from next year we'll be offering all of the units twice, so both in the first half and second half of the year. We teach generally in an intensive blended mode, so that means that there's a combination of online learning plus intensive face-to-faces. So as an example, I'll just pick one here. For social investment and philanthropy, there's a week online where you cover your kind of core conceptual material, theoretical foundations, and that's followed up by a 1.5-day intensive workshop, which involves much more interactive, industry-based learning. So guests and so forth. So you do the online component, so you come equipped with some of that foundational material. Next year, that'll also be offered across the semester in semester 2, and in term 1, so a 6-week block beginning in March. The same goes for social impact, entrepreneurs, social innovation, and corporate responsibility and accountability. I guess, they are, as Mark and others mentioned, it's quite intense. But all of our students managing complex lives, family, other, caring roles, professional careers. So you're amongst like-minded students with those challenges, but they're kind of, the way it's structured is that, you can fit it around as much as possible around those complex life arrangements that most of our students have. So that's a real bonus. And, we'll have the online only sessions as well, because this year, as we moved rapidly from blended to wholly online, we had really great outcomes with the students and excellent feedback, and I guess a lot of innovation in that process as well. So those 4 graduate certificate units, I guess, cover the foundations of social impact as, level 1 units. At level 2, which is the graduate diploma of social impact, we have evaluation impact measurement and leadership for social impact, which is taught by Graham. If you want to exit with it, the graduate diploma is not an entry degree, it's only an exit degree. So if you want to do a graduate diploma, you can integrate 2 electives from the Australian Graduate School of Entrepreneurship, of which our programs are a part of. So you'll see a little black box below, depending where your screen is. Or you can select core Master of Social Impact units to replace those. Things become, I guess, more applied at that level 2. You've got the foundational knowledge. And then at level 3, so at the master's level, we have 2 core units: social venture development and strategic philanthropy. And these are what are called applied units. They're quite small cohorts. You work across a semester. Christian can talk through strategic philanthropy because that's his unit. Social venture development is next year we're working with the Swinburne Social Startup Studio, which is actually an initiative CSI. So Libby Ward Christie will be working with a couple of the enterprises within her accelerator, and the students, work with that entity, starting with addressing the problem first, so trying to really understand the social problem, and then working back with that organisation and on how some potential solutions. I might hand over to, maybe Christian to talk through strategic philanthropy, and then back to Graham if he wants to add some more to the other units and other things.
Thanks, Mike, and thanks, Graham, and great to have all of you with us here today to find out more about the opportunities to study at CSI Swinburne. So just in terms of who I am, so I'm an industry fellow at the Centre for Social Impact at Swinburne, which is sort of a kind of a hybrid role where I do teaching, research, but my background is actually from industry, so to speak, in that I worked for the peak body for philanthropy, Philanthropy Australia, and then government previously. And I sort of still really have that kind of hybrid focus of working, teaching, and doing research, but I still actually do work with Philanthropy Australia, and I try and bring that into everything that I do in my teaching and other things as well at CSI Swinburne. And I co-teach with Mike, say, social investment and philanthropy, corporate responsibility and accountability with Graham. And yeah, I also do run the strategic philanthropy unit, which is in the 2nd semester every year. And basically this unit is one you do towards the end of your journey studying, and it's a very practical unit where you are learning by doing. We cover sort of some of the sort of debates and concepts around how philanthropy, which is the use of private wealth for public good, grant making by foundations, etc., the debates around that, and the trends, etc. But in the unit, you're actually given $8,000 thanks to one of our industry partners, Equity Trustees, and you run a grant-making process, and you make a grant. You set up the process, you set up the software, you go out to organisations, you determine, at the very beginning what your values are, what you want to achieve with it, what your aims are going to be, etc. It's a really practical unit where you learn by doing, and you get to have real impact. So this year, for example, the students gave a grant to the Minus 18 Foundation, which is a youth-led organisation focusing on LGBTIQ+ inclusion, and they're now getting an $8,000 grant. So yeah, it's a great way to sort of finish off your studies towards the end of your studies. And if any of you are interested about that unit or any of the other units that I sort of teach, very welcome to answer questions or chat, etc. Thank you.
I'd just add as well to what Christian and Mike said, and thank you, Christian, for that great overview as well. sometimes when we attend these types of sessions, there is a lot of information. So my details will be made available at the end of the session or at a later date. Don't hesitate to just give me a call or drop me an email and just maybe ask all the questions that you may not feel comfortable asking in front of a larger group, because there's nothing in here that you should feel in any way threatened by or kind of a little bit beyond you. That's what we're here to do, is really help and support. And perhaps Mark can speak to this, that like we do really do a lot to offer support and make those connections between students. And we even can see that we're starting now to get an uptake of international students wanting to come and do our degree program. I've just approved 2 more this week. So we find it's a welcoming cohort that you'll be part of. And that's really driven by a lot of the conveners and people who are here to really make your educational experience something that's very important across your personal and professional lives. So please don't hesitate to ask any questions that you may have, because there's a good chance we've have experience of hearing those questions, but you might actually have something that's novel and new, and that's really, really important for us, and we really welcome that as well. Is there anybody thinking of enrolling for 2021?
I have a question, actually, if that's okay, about that.
Great to hear, and thank you for being with us today.
Thanks for having me. So in terms of 2021, I'm just wondering where, and I get the impression you do run quite flexibly, do you do a mid-year intake? So is there an opportunity to start in second semester?
There is indeed, Sarah, and that's a fantastic question, because what's new and innovative about this year is that we're offering our graduate certificate units twice this year. So it means that if you do choose to come and join mid-year for semester 2, you'll have the opportunity of taking multiple units in that semester. So that's come from feedback from our students, but also from Mike's great experience of the degree program and having that vision to actually see that this is such an important part of what we need to do. Is it's taking our flexibility to another level so that we can offer students the opportunity to get started on social impact units as soon as they enroll, rather than having to wait an extra year. Yeah. So we are absolutely flexible, and semester 2 this year will, all things being well, with great hope, we'll be in that position to be able to come back onto campus face to face. So you'll have that to look forward to if you join in semester 2 as well.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Great question. Really appreciate your input. Anybody else like to ask any questions about enrollment, about scholarships, perhaps? Because I was listening with great interest to the discussion around scholarships. I really would encourage people to apply for those scholarships, because if you're like me, you probably think, oh well, I have a very small chance of getting it. They're exactly the kinds of people who need to be applying for the scholarship, because the chances are you'll produce a very, very good application. And sometimes you might not get it in the year that you apply, but given that you've gone through that process of experience, the next year you come to apply, you'll have a chance to really think about, well, what's authentic about what I can offer to be awarded a scholarship? And we're here to help you develop that as well. It's almost developing your own, what we call in the leadership unit, which I teach, authentic leadership. So it's about actually getting in touch with who you are, what your skill set is, and how you can leverage that to actually get not only some financial support, but also another line on your CV, which shows that you're a little bit special because you've been able to leverage your skill set, your experience, that CSI would offer you a scholarship. So I think it's a great initiative, and the more we can show demand for people applying for scholarships, the more we can make cases for needing more scholarships, and the more it just builds a community of alumni who can actually see the great value of getting a scholarship and go back maybe to their employer and say, well, look, this is something that we can work with Swinburne to really develop. So it's almost like that old saying, and I hope I don't say it incorrectly, but it's like the rising tide lifting all boats. Any other thoughts or comments, questions from anybody?
I have a couple of quite simple, or maybe simple, logistics questions, if that's okay.
Not a problem, please. Absolutely.
So it has been a while since I studied. Would you be doing 2 units per semester if you were full-time, and 2 units per year if you were part-time?
So there is rules around loads, but what I find is typically that we help our students to succeed, and that you can actually tailor your loading to suit whatever is really happening in your life. And maybe sometimes it might be thinking about, do I want to enroll in a master's straight up, or do I want to enroll in the graduate certificate first of all, where I can see that there's a vision of 4 units, and by taking those 4 units I can actually get my head around it. But like, it also gives you much more flexibility in deciding, well, how much do I want to do, given that I've not been a student for a long time. Or even, and this is why I think you've asked a very important question, some people are coming to education for the first time as well, and they're using their most incredible post-experience in their career that they've had to date to come back into university life. And again, that's where I'm here to support you with that. And you'll find that all of your conveners will do everything they possibly can to ensure that you have the right load within your study plan. And I was listening to Mark earlier on talking also about how life is dynamic, it changes, and you might want to look at sometimes maybe it's 1 unit in a year or 2 units. Sometimes you might have more time and you do more if you're doing the masters. Does that?
Yeah, I think just to add to that, thank you, Graham. Technically full-time is 4 units a semester.
Yes.
Oh, is it? Okay.
And 3 units can be if you add in winter. The way it's sort of structured is that we'll have 2 6-week programs that don't actually overlap, but there'll be overlap in assessment, and then semester-long units running. It's generally those that are literally full-time, they're not doing anything else that are full-time. It's Graham's bit of context, Sigrid has been in the program. She's got a graduate certificate, I believe.
Yeah.
I beg your pardon, Sigrid. Yeah.
No, not at all. And I think, Graham, I might contact you separately rather than derail the chat today, because I've done a mixture. I've done 4 units, but a mixture between graduate certificate and diploma.
Don't hesitate to share the experience there as well, Sigrid, because I think that's where people learn the most, is actually from other people's narratives and stories. So that's fantastic as well.
And I think, that was a really important question to ask as well, Sigrid. So, yeah, it's, pretty much one of the most common questions you get is, and, that's trying to work out the balance with complex and full lives is, the challenging part. I mean, even doing 2 side by side, not even concurrently, can be challenging, as for some people, and others, they can have more scope to do more concurrently. So it's sort of set up, and that's why the way the timetable and the units are structured next year is to kind of, as Graham mentioned, you could literally do the whole graduate certificate in a semester now. So, that would be busy, but if you took the time off, or if you had scope, that's something that can be done now. Previously, it took a minimum of a year to do the graduate certificate, with the average, the main sitting in between 2 years in most instances. So, yeah.
And these are, I often feel too, Mike, that these are sometimes learned skills as a student, is actually knowing how to manage a study plan that works for you. And personally, I feel less is more, because if you try to do too much, then suddenly things change at work, things change at home, and you realize you have a level of stress that you may not need. So I always kind of encourage students to really see the play the long game, if insofar as allow themselves that opportunity to start in a way that helps them to succeed, rather than start in a way that quickly makes you feel overwhelmed. So that's it's managing the load is such an important thing, and our program is that flexibility there to help you with. Sorry, Mike.
No, I think Mark, articulated that very well. You want to read every reading. And as we all know, well, those who have been students, the more you put in, the more you get out. So as Graham said, you want to have the right space to do so. I think also
I've been a benefit of the flexibility of the program too. I think I had a child in between my somewhere in between the 4 units that I completed as well, and took a bit of a break. So yeah, for me it was, I really enjoyed what I learned and what I got out of the graduate certificate, and which is why I was looking to kind of further that study. So my main consideration though was about what I can fit into my life and into work and young children as well. And Mike, when you mentioned like the online and intensive format, or like combined online intensive, and you said 1 week was online, is that, are they flexible hours or are they set hours? Is that?
Yeah, so they're called self-directed or asynchronous. So essentially at the start of the week, the lecturer or convener opens up a module. There might be some videos and then activities. They're pretty engaged though, or they're very engaged forums. So there's discussion boards of different activities, and we like to use that to kind of, I guess, transmit some of the theoretical and conceptual materials across definitional stuff. But there'll be different activities, that keep things going. So they're you can log on at any time basically, whether it's midnight or midday. So the balance is still either live online or face to face, in the sense that and we found this year running our live online workshops was actually a surprisingly rich experience, because we'd done a lot of online learning, but it had been asynchronous predominantly. So this was our first kind of foray to bring the model online, and it worked really well.
It's as if it's been I often think now, Mike, it's been an important part of the journey to bring us to where we are today, where we have fully online, and we have face-to-face coming in semester 2. So it just offers students much more options and opportunity to learn in different ways. And by learning in different ways, you just learn a whole lot more about your own skill set and what you can carry forward. You might find that actually I can speak quite well and coordinate a group quite well online in a different way than to what you would if it was face-to-face in a team within an office. And these are all really nice little insights that you actually gain. And that's the way it has been for me personally. And a few of the students now that I had in my units have talked about that as well. They really enjoyed the opportunity to learn online, and they'll look forward to going back face-to-face in due course. So it's good to see that little bit of balance.
Yeah, and I think then there's the option to, for some terms or semesters, you do some online, some blended, some wholly face-to-face. So it's, I think, Daniel, did you have a question? Yeah.
Sorry, yeah, I just wanted to check. Look, I'm mostly interested in the evaluation and impact measurement, and I'm wondering if you do short courses or whether it's possible to go straight in to, you know, that evaluation and impact measurement, you know, the grad diploma, rather than needing to have the graduate certificate foundation.
It's an interesting question that you asked, Daniel. Sometimes it can be possible. But it usually will it'll usually require a special type of sign-off, but that's something that I can talk to you if it's something that is very important as a consideration for you. I can talk to you about that further and see what we could be able to do.
So yeah, it's a sort of informal pathways, and then maybe a new formal pathway to integrate that in the future.
That's right. And I remember as I took over the role as course director for Mike, is that we really do try to provide every opportunity for our students to do social impact units.
Everyone's seeing the screen? So I'll just briefly run through the options at UWA. So it's a pretty tight setup, and there are 4 units in the grad cert in social impact. And as I mentioned, those 4 units also articulate fully into the MBA, meaning that if you do the grad cert, you can then take all 4 units into the MBA, and you've already completed 4 units of the MBA. Some people actually just go straight into the MBA and do the social impact stream, or some people do the MBA and do 1 or 2 units in the grad cert. So what this means when you're looking at the grad cert and social impact is you're seeing a 4-unit set that is fully articulated into the MBA. The majority of the students in every class are grad cert and social impact students. But we then have some extra students that come in from the MBA, and that's actually often a really good thing. So we get really nice mixture into our units. But the units are dominated by the grad cert group. And one thing, before I forget again, and Bryony can talk about this, is the alumni. So as soon as you do 1 unit, you become part of the alumni. And the alumni runs itself and has a lot of, even with COVID-19, it's still done a few things, but generally speaking, has a very strong social network and a lot of links that occur. So one of the great benefits of the grad cert is you get to know people, you get to network, you'll find yourself doing jobs with others who are part of the alumni. And it turns out to be a really critical work, as well as social network. So the benefits go well beyond the learning, and peer-to-peer learning is usually presented as one of the key bits of learning, but it's the network that matters as well, fundamentally. So the 4 units, you can start at any time, but let's suppose you're starting at the first trimester, and what we see is people starting throughout the year, but it's actually useful to start the beginning of the year or alternatively at the end. So the 2 units that people like starting in are the social impact entrepreneurs and innovation unit or the leadership unit. So social impact entrepreneurs and innovation covers the topics of social impact. It covers social enterprises, social entrepreneurship. It covers the social innovation area. And it's also got a strong social design element. So Katie Studley runs that, and she's had that history around good systems thinking from a social innovation point of view. She's been involved in social enterprises and social entrepreneurship. And she does a lot of social design and has good models of social design. A lot of you recognize that social design, co-design is a very popular thing at the moment. But we want that to become much more than just a workshop, and to have a good theoretical grounding in methods of social design, I think, is really important. She also brings in the world of danger cooling, which is Walking Together, Aboriginal-led program that has its a base at the Centre for Social Impact, and is now really having an impact through Perth in particular, and a wider impact internationally. And down here, Leadership for Social Impact, that's Renew's unit, and that is, it sort of encompasses the entire world of leadership theory, but then takes us off into the social leadership space. So you actually get all of the leadership stuff, but you get more than that. You get work through the social leadership space. So it's really important. And then you have the social investment and philanthropy, which we focus a lot on the social finance area, and social impact investing and so on. Obviously other forms of funding of social purpose activity, but they're the two areas that we focus in on. And then demonstrating social impact is all about measurement and evaluation, and measurement approaches, outcomes measurement approaches and frameworks, and so on. So that covers really the very important parts of the work of of social impact. And so that's the benefit. So you have the 4 units. Eligibility, pretty straightforward. Either bachelor's degree and 2 years professional experience, or no degree, but 8 years of professional experience. So if you've had either of those two, you're in. And then check out the MBA entry. But because the grad cert fully articulates, even if you're not, well, actually, you're always going to be eligible for the MBA. Don't you worry about that. But to go further, take the grad cert into the MBA, you would be having to pass those units. So you can do that to do the full MBA, and we have 4 $5,000 scholarships and 1 $10,000 scholarship available for study in 2021. And usually we do find the government departments will back, as Bryony said, but we also see not-for-profits back their staff as well. The units are expensive. We don't have control over the price, so it's very unfortunate. And the price is set by the MBA prices. So that's why you really do need to watch out for that. Very important. Okay, so I'll just stop sharing so that we can have a bit of time together again, and just take any questions now. And I know Mags has been putting in a whole pile of leads to follow up on. How much are the units? What's the dollar price?
I can answer that. I've just put a link in the chat to the fees calculator, but just to give you the information so you don't need to look for it, it's basically $4,812.50 a unit. So that means the course for all 4 units is $19,250. So those fees are for the 2021 fees. So I don't know if there has been much of a fee hike every year, but if you were to take the course into 2022, for example, there may be a slight fee hike, but there also might not be. But that gives you a rough idea of how much it is. And just touching on the scholarships again, I'll put a link in for the scholarships, and I know Kath mentioned the number earlier on. So there is one that's available, and I think this is right, Kath, at one that's available at $10,000 for UWA, and 4 that's available at $5,000 for UWA students. And that is for UWA students only, not for the other universities.
It's entirely dedicated to UWA.
And Kath, you may want to add to that.
And we also have, sorry Mags, we have 2 rounds of scholarships. So one at the start of the year and one in the second part of the year. Encourage you to apply. If you don't get in the first time, try again. And as Mag said, there are 1 for 10,000 and 4 for 5,000 next year.
Right, fantastic. And Kath, just to clarify, if if all the scholarships that we've listed here, the 4 at 5,000 and 1 at 10, go at the beginning of the year, does that mean that there's none left for the end of the year, or?
Yes, that's correct. So our allocation could go all at the start of the year.
Right.
And yes, yeah, that could well happen.
Yeah.
Often in past years that I've been on the board, a scholarship panel, it hasn't worked out like that, but it may well do.
Yeah. And now that we don't have, we did have the BHP scholarships, and there was also one Bank West scholarship as well, but we don't have those now. And so it's just this set. So think about it going into 2021. The actual application processes are relatively straightforward for the scholarship, and also relatively straightforward for the grad cert as well. So it's all pretty straightforward to do. And just remember that if you're worried about what's happening to my application, or if you get some very strange response, such as, yeah, you're not eligible, just send Mags an email, because we'll sort that out. And Bryony's been letting everyone know about the government assist program. So if you can get that plus the scholarship, it's starting to bring that price down quite a bit. Good. Okay, so any questions that people have?
Sorry, I'll just answer the question. Fiona's just put in a question about time commitment and how many Fridays and Saturdays per unit. So what I might do is just tell you the teaching days, and I might ask Bryony to talk a bit about the time commitment. I think she might be the best person to tell you about the time outside the actual contact hours. So each unit runs over 5 days, and they are Fridays and Saturdays. Now the normal pattern was it would be a Friday and Saturday, a further Friday and Saturday of a break of maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, depending on the unit, and then one further Saturday. So that's the standard kind of unit, but it does, we find each year there might be a difference in 1 or 2 units just around other things to do with the MBA course or public holidays or that kind of thing. The contact hours for the unit are 9 to 5 on each of those days. So that's the kind of standard commitment that you would need to give. And we do ask that students attend all the classes. If you can't attend one due to whatever reason, you can request that through the unit coordinator. I think each unit on the last Saturday does involve normally the group presentations, I think, for every student, for every unit as well. But maybe Bryony, you want to talk a bit more about other time commitments.
Yeah, maybe the study commitments and things.
Yeah.
Just another, before I say that, just another note, that kind of Friday, Saturday block works really, really well to build relationships with the rest of your classmates. You go and you have lunch, or you go have, maybe a cheeky drink afterwards or whatever, and that I find that to be really, really good for that. Whereas some of the MBA students that I spoke to who do like a couple of hours a week of an evening, they sort of said that's really, really challenging. And because that is such a key part of the benefits of this grad cert, I thought that was really well organised, and it seemed to fit quite well. I just took annual leave off for those Fridays, which, yes, chewed up my annual leave, especially because I work part-time. But, it was the easiest, because then I didn't have to deal with childcare. So, we had the daycare kind of arranged. So that sort of worked well. In regards to study commitments, it says in all of the kind of literature that it's 150 hours per unit, which to me, I was like, that sounds crazy. No way. In my undergrad, I never did that much study. But of course, postgrad is so different. You're actually really interested in what you're learning, and you want to be putting in the time and to read, to do the readings as much as humanly possible. So I thought that was actually quite accurate. As I said before, like I started off really super gung-ho doing absolutely every single bit of the reading, plus all of the extra reading and everything, which, I just sort of absorbed everything because I was so into it, and then burnt out a little bit and realised I had to really be selective about what I was reading in the time frame for each unit. and I saved all of the readings to come back to later, which, you know, I've done a lot of that. And so, yeah, I think that that's probably quite accurate. I would do it in blocks. So I would go in on the weekends where I could into the business school and do the readings or do the assignments, and that really helped me fit that in sort of around my work commitments and things, and kid, you know, life commitments. So yeah.
And there's as you mentioned, there's a designated wing of the business school on the bottom floor to MBA students. So all the grad students can go through into that area. And it's usually a nice kind of area to work in. So any further questions?
I have just a question around coordinating with groups. You mentioned about group presentations and the assignments and things. Obviously, when people are working full-time, etc., families, life, it's very hard to get groups together.
Yeah.
So what's the balance there between how much work you can get done individually by yourself versus what you need to do together in the group?
Bryony might be good at this.
Do you want me to field this one?
Yes.
So what I found, in each unit, there is a group assignment as well as individual ones, and usually they overlap. And so what I found the best way is often they kind of tell you what the group work is going to be at the very beginning. And for those units that it worked really, really well with the group work is when we sort of got together really early in the unit, had a chat about what we were going to be doing, and then went away and was able to progress that individually. And so it is a balance, because some people were working full time, some people working 4 days like me, some people were off work or, you know, doing different hours. So trying to get together was challenging, and it was just about really being, you know, communicating with the group. I loved the group work. I found that the space that you really build those networks and those relationships. And we would catch up at, you know, at the business school, but then also at how, you know, our houses where that was practical, and you know, sometimes at like a coffee shop or whatever, just to have that kind of initial meeting to discuss what we were going to do. So it is really based, it's not a large cohort, and so, you know, just being able to kind of have those chats with people and being honest about your situation, I think that was the best. Like, everybody has stuff that they've got to be doing around other stuff, and some people, especially those doing MBAs, they have a lot of other units that they're also doing at the same time, and so, you know, sometimes we just couldn't meet up as regularly as we wanted to, but a Sunday arvo was usually a good time that most people had off, that we could catch up even just for an hour to, you know, touch base.
Hi everyone. So good to have you back. I hope you all got a lot out of those breakout rooms, and I hope it didn't cut you off mid-sentence, but if it did, you can always make contact with us or the individual you were speaking with. Thanks so much. I just wanted to thank our panellists and our breakout facilitators for today, and thanks to all of the participants who came along to hear more about our education offerings. We hope you got the answers you were looking for, but if not, we're here to chat with you. We will be in touch with a follow-up and the recording. There are a heap of people who registered who I think weren't able to make it, so we'll send everyone the recording, and that will come through either this afternoon or tomorrow morning. And we'll also add our contact details to that email. So as I said, today's our final Impact 2020 webinar, the 47th of the year. So I just want to take the opportunity to thank the thousands of people who tuned in to hear from our 100 plus researchers, educators and thought leaders across these webinars. I'll just take the opportunity to wish you all a lovely holiday season, and we'll see you in 2021. Thanks again. Bye-bye for now.